nobody could understand why 6 friends disappeared on their way back from camp. In 2024, what FBI found in the town's old houses solved the 29-year mystery. But the truth they discovered was much darker than anyone expected. Before we start, hit subscribe to uncover stories they tried to bury and make sure no mystery stays unsolved. The autumn fog had settled thick over Pine Ridge University campus like a blanket nobody dared lift. It clung to the dormitory windows, curled under streetlights, and muffled the sound of late-night conversations drifting from open windows. October in 1995 was unseasonably warm, but something about that weekend felt different. Heavier. Like the air itself was holding its breath. It was just past midnight when the 6 friends loaded their gear into Marcus Chen's blue Honda Civic and Sarah Kim's red Jeep Cherokee. They were heading to Camp Wildwood, a 3-hour drive into the Cascade Mountains for what they called their annual stress relief weekend before midterm exams hit like a freight train. Marcus Chen, 21, was the unofficial leader of their group. Pre-med student with careful hands and an infectious laugh. His girlfriend Sarah Kim, 20, studying psychology, always carried a worn notebook where she wrote down everything interesting people said. Jake Morrison, 22, the gentle giant studying forestry who could identify any tree within 50 miles. His twin sister Emma Morrison, also 22, an art major who saw beauty in shadows other people missed. David Rodriguez, 20, computer science prodigy who talked to machines better than humans. And finally, Lisa Park, 19, the youngest, studying journalism and always asking questions that made people uncomfortable. They had been inseparable since freshman year. 6 strangers thrown together in the same dormitory floor who somehow clicked like puzzle pieces. They studied together, ate together, laughed together, and trusted each other with secrets they wouldn't tell their families. The plan was simple. Drive to Camp Wildwood Friday night, spend Saturday hiking and swimming in the lake, return Sunday evening. Nothing complicated. Nothing dangerous. Just 6 friends escaping the pressure of university life for 48 hours. But they never came back. The first sign something was wrong came Sunday night when Marcus's roommate, Tony Valdez, realized the bed across from his was still empty. Marcus was obsessively punctual. He had never missed a class, never been late for anything, never failed to call if plans changed. By 10 p.m., Tony was worried. By midnight, he was calling campus security. The second sign was Sarah's parents. They lived only 2 hours away and expected their daughter for Sunday dinner every other week. When she didn't show up and didn't answer her phone, they drove straight to campus. Sarah never missed family dinner without calling first. By Monday morning, all 6 families had converged on Pine Ridge University like storm clouds gathering before lightning strikes. The campus that had felt so safe, so predictable, suddenly seemed enormous and threatening. 6 students, 2 vehicles, 1 weekend camping trip. Gone. The search began immediately. Campus security, local police, park rangers, and volunteers scoured every inch of the route to Camp Wildwood. They found Sarah's red Jeep Cherokee first, abandoned in a rest stop parking lot about 90 minutes from campus. The vehicle was locked, keys missing, no signs of struggle. Personal items were still inside. Sarah's notebook lay open on the passenger seat, last entry dated Friday evening. M says this trip will be legendary. Something about his smile tonight feels different. Like he knows something we don't. Marcus's blue Honda Civic was discovered 2 days later, partially hidden behind a gas station dumpster 20 miles from where they found the Jeep. Again, locked, keys missing, no obvious signs of violence. But there was something strange. Both vehicles had been wiped clean. Not just fingerprints, everything. Steering wheels, door handles, seat adjustments, radio presets. Someone had meticulously erased every trace of human presence. The investigation moved swiftly but found nothing. Camp Wildwood staff confirmed the group had never checked in for their reserved cabin. Gas station attendants along the route couldn't remember seeing them. Security cameras from 1995 were grainy, unreliable, and showed nothing useful. It was as if 6 people had simply dissolved into the Pacific Northwest fog. Detective Ray Hutchinson led the case for Snohomish County Sheriff's Office. He was 3 years from retirement, had worked missing persons for over 2 decades, and had never encountered anything like this. 6 adults vanishing simultaneously without a trace defied every statistical model. Individual disappearances happened. Couples sometimes vanished together, usually by choice. But 6 friends? With 2 separate vehicles? Impossible. Groups this size don't just evaporate, Hutchinson told reporters during a press conference 1 week after the disappearance. Someone knows something. Someone saw something. People don't vanish from the face of the earth without leaving footprints. But these 6 had done exactly that. The families organized search parties. Fellow students created missing person flyers. Local newspapers ran front-page stories. The university offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to their whereabouts. Tips poured in from across the state. Psychics called claiming visions. Conspiracy theorists suggested alien abduction. Nothing led anywhere meaningful. 3 months later, the case went cold. For 29 years, the disappearance of the Pine Ridge 6 became one of Washington state's most infamous unsolved mysteries. Families aged. Parents died without knowing what happened to their children. Siblings grew up in the shadow of unanswered questions. The university installed memorial benches with small brass plaques bearing their names. Occasionally, the case would resurface. True crime podcasters would investigate. Cold case documentaries would feature interviews with family members. Amateur sleuths would create online forums dedicated to solving the mystery. Every few years, someone would claim to have new evidence, but nothing ever materialized. Detective Hutchinson retired in 1998, taking the case file with him in spirit if not in fact. He never stopped thinking about those 6 faces staring at him from the missing persons board. On his deathbed in 2019, his daughter later revealed, his final coherent words were, "Find those kids. They're still out there." But the case had officially been inactive for over 15 years. The families had given up hope. The university had forgotten. The world had moved on. Until March 2024. Special Agent Jennifer Shaw from the FBI's Seattle field office received an unusual call on a Tuesday morning. The Pine Ridge Police Department had arrested a man named Robert Crawley for attempting to sell stolen electronics. Routine background check revealed he was a registered sex offender who had been living in the area since 1994. During questioning about recent burglaries, Crawley made an offhand comment that caught Detective Mike Torres's attention. "You cops think you're so smart," Crawley had said, apparently trying to deflect from the theft charges. "You never even figured out what happened to those college kids from back in the 90s. Torres had no idea what Crawley was talking about, but something about the man's tone suggested this wasn't random rambling. When Torres looked up missing college students from the 1990s, the Pine Ridge 6 case file appeared. When he showed Crawley the photographs, the man's demeanor changed completely. "I didn't say nothing," Crawley muttered, suddenly refusing to make eye contact. That's when Torres called the FBI. Agent Shaw had joined the Bureau in 2010, specializing in cold case disappearances. She had worked the case files that kept other agents awake at night, had developed a reputation for finding connections others missed. When she reviewed the Pine Ridge 6 file, several details immediately struck her as inconsistent with the original investigation. First, the timeline. Both vehicles had been found within 48 hours, but forensic analysis from 1995 was primitive compared to modern capabilities. DNA testing was expensive and time-consuming. Cell phone tracking didn't exist. Digital forensics was science fiction. Second, the geographic pattern. The abandoned vehicles were found in a specific corridor, almost like someone was creating a false trail leading away from Pine Ridge and toward Seattle. But the route made no sense if the group was actually heading to Camp Wildwood. Third, Robert Crawley. In 1995, he would have been 32 years old, recently moved to the area, working as a maintenance supervisor for several local businesses including 2 that were directly on the route the students would have taken to camp. Shaw requested permission to reopen the case using modern investigative techniques. The Bureau approved, assigning a small task force including forensic accountant Maria Santos and digital forensics specialist Tommy Chong. Their first breakthrough came from Crawley's employment records. In October 1995, he had been working part-time for Pine Ridge Storage Solutions, a self-storage facility that rented units to college students and local residents. The business was located exactly halfway between the university and the rest stop where Sarah's Jeep was found. Shaw obtained a warrant to search Crawley's current residence in any storage units he had rented over the past 3 decades. What they found in his basement would change everything. Crawley had kept trophies. Not the gruesome kind that makes headlines. Something more insidious, more patient. He had collected small personal items from dozens of young people over nearly 30 years. Jewelry that wouldn't be immediately missed. Clothing items taken from laundromats. Photographs stolen from dormitory rooms during maintenance visits. License plates carefully removed and replaced with duplicates. And in a locked metal box beneath his workbench, items that belonged to the Pine Ridge Six. Marcus Chen's class ring. Sarah Kim's silver bracelet with tiny charms representing each of her friends. Emma Morrison's paint-stained scrunchie. Lisa Park's press badge from the university newspaper. David Rodriguez's backup calculator. Jake Morrison's compass. Each item was carefully catalogued with dates, locations, and what appeared to be coded notes in Crawley's handwriting. The compass entry read, JM October 15th, Storage Unit 47 Cooperative until END. Agent Shaw felt her blood turn cold. Storage Unit 47 had been rented continuously by Robert Crawley since November 1995. When the FBI task force cut the lock and rolled up the metal door, they found what appeared to be a carefully maintained living space. Mattresses, blankets, camping equipment, portable toilet, battery-powered radio, and dozens of boxes containing non-perishable food supplies. But what horrified Shaw wasn't the living arrangements. It was the monitoring equipment. Crawley had installed a sophisticated surveillance system for 1995 technology. Multiple cameras, audio recording devices, and what appeared to be a two-way communication system. The unit had been designed to hold people, watch them, and communicate with them from the outside. In a file cabinet, they found detailed logs written in Crawley's meticulous handwriting. Entries dating from October 1995 through February 1996. Day 1, all 6 subjects secured. MC showing leadership tendencies. SK documenting everything in that notebook. Need to separate them. Day 8, removed SK notebook. Subjects becoming agitated. JM, male, attempted forced entry on door. Reduced food allocation. Day 15, EM displaying concerning psychological symptoms. Speaking to herself, drawing on walls with burnt matches. Consider early termination. Day 23, DR has dismantled radio attempting communication device. Intelligence level higher than anticipated. Confiscated all electronic items. Day 31, LP asking too many questions about my background, family, motivations. Journalistic training making her dangerous. Priority termination candidate. Day 45, subjects have formed alliance, refusing individual cooperation. SK appears to be psychological leader despite MC's attempts to maintain control. Time to implement separation protocol. The logs continued for nearly 4 months, documenting what appeared to be a psychological experiment conducted on 6 kidnapped university students. Crawley had been studying group dynamics, testing leadership hierarchies, and methodically breaking down their social bonds through isolation, manipulation, and fear. The final entries were brief and chilling. Day 118, weather improving. Spring approaching. Risk of discovery increasing with hiking season. Day 120, subjects have discovered ventilation shaft weakness. Security compromised. Day 121, emergency termination protocol initiated. Disposal site prepared. Evidence removal in progress. Day 122 Pine Ridge 6 case officially closed. Media coverage diminishing. Success. Agent Shaw immediately ordered excavation teams to search the property around Pine Ridge Storage Solutions. Ground-penetrating radar identified multiple subsurface anomalies. Within 72 hours, they had located a mass grave containing 6 sets of human remains. Dental records confirmed the identities: Marcus Chen, Sarah Kim, Emma Morrison, Jake Morrison, David Rodriguez, and Lisa Park. After 29 years, the Pine Ridge 6 had been found. But the story was far from over. Hidden in the storage unit's false ceiling, investigators discovered additional evidence that expanded the scope of the case beyond anything they had imagined. Crawley hadn't just killed 6 university students. He had been operating a systematic kidnapping and murder scheme targeting young people across the Pacific Northwest for over 3 decades. Files contained detailed profiles on dozens of potential victims. Photographs taken with telephoto lenses. Class schedules copied from university registrars. Work schedules from part-time jobs. Personal habits documented through weeks of surveillance. Social connections mapped with obsessive precision. Most terrifying were the success files. Evidence suggesting the Pine Ridge 6 weren't Crawley's first victims, and they weren't intended to be his last. Maria Santos, the task force's forensic accountant, traced Crawley's financial records back to 1987. She discovered he had been renting multiple storage units across Washington, Oregon, and Northern California under various aliases. Each location corresponded with clusters of unsolved missing persons cases involving young adults between 18 and 25 years old. Tommy Chong, the digital forensics specialist, recovered data from primitive computer equipment found in Crawley's home. Despite the technology's age, he managed to extract files containing what appeared to be a database of victims spanning 37 years. Names, dates, locations, and status codes: acquired, in progress, terminated, disposed. The database contained over 200 entries. Agent Shaw requested immediate assistance from FBI field offices in Portland, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. Within weeks, search teams were excavating sites across 3 states, following maps and location references found in Crawley's files. They found 17 additional burial sites containing the remains of 43 young people who had been missing for decades. College students, hitchhikers, runaways, part-time workers who had simply vanished without explanation. Each death had been classified as voluntary disappearance or accident. None had been connected to the others. Robert Crawley had been operating one of the most prolific serial killing schemes in American history, hiding in plain sight as a maintenance worker with access to dozens of businesses, universities, and residential complexes. When confronted with the evidence, Crawley showed no remorse. During FBI interrogation, he spoke about his victims like research subjects, explaining his methodology with the detached precision of a scientist discussing lab rats. Young people today have no appreciation for survival instincts, he told Agent Shaw during one recorded session. They trust too easily, depend too heavily on technology, lack fundamental problem-solving skills. I was conducting important behavioral research. Shaw asked why he had targeted groups instead of individuals. Group dynamics are more complex, Crawley replied. Individual subjects adapt too quickly to controlled environments. Groups create internal conflict, resistance patterns, leadership struggles. Much more interesting to observe and document. When Shaw asked specifically about the Pine Ridge 6, Crawley's demeanor shifted slightly. For the first time, he seemed almost regretful. That group was exceptional, he admitted. They maintained cohesion longer than any previous subjects. The Chen boy had natural leadership qualities. The Kim girl was documenting everything, creating historical records. The Morrison twins supported each other psychologically. Rodriguez was constantly attempting engineering solutions. Park asked questions that indicated higher-level analytical thinking. He paused, staring at his hands. They almost escaped 3 times. I had never encountered such persistent collaboration under stress. In the end, I had to terminate the experiment earlier than planned because they were becoming genuinely dangerous to operational security. Shaw pressed for details about their final days. They had figured out my scheduling patterns, Crawley said. Chen and Rodriguez had worked together to weaken the ventilation shaft connections. Park had been keeping detailed notes about my voice, speech patterns, trying to identify regional accent markers. Kim was providing psychological analysis, helping them understand my behavioral triggers. The Morrison twins were conducting strength tests on various structural components. He looked directly at Shaw. On day 120, they nearly succeeded in breaking out. They had coordinated a simultaneous assault on 3 different structural weak points while I was conducting routine maintenance. If they had succeeded, they would have compromised not only their own containment but potentially the entire operation. Shaw asked what he meant by entire operation. Crawley smiled for the first time during questioning. Did you really think Pine Ridge Storage was my only facility? The revelation sent shockwaves through the task force. If Crawley had been operating multiple locations simultaneously, the scope of his crimes was even larger than they had calculated. Emergency search warrants were obtained for every property Crawley had rented, worked at, or visited regularly over the past 4 decades. What they found redefined the parameters of the investigation. Crawley had been running a network of kidnapping sites across the western United States. Not just storage units, but abandoned buildings, rural properties, and underground facilities that he had constructed specifically for holding victims long-term. Each location was equipped with surveillance equipment, basic life support systems, and detailed documentation protocols. More horrifying was the discovery that Crawley hadn't been working alone. In files recovered from his primary residence, investigators found correspondence with other individuals who shared his interests in behavioral research involving kidnapped subjects. Email addresses, postal mail exchanges, and what appeared to be a network of people conducting similar operations in different geographic regions. The Pine Ridge 6 case had uncovered not just a serial killer, but an organized group of predators who had been systematically targeting young people for decades, treating human beings like laboratory animals. Agent Shaw briefed FBI Director Christopher Wray personally on the expanding scope of the investigation. Within days, the case had been elevated to a national priority, with task forces established in 12 major cities in coordination with international law enforcement agencies. The media coverage was unprecedented. For 29 years, the families of the Pine Ridge 6 had lived with uncertainty, hoping their children might still be alive somewhere, imagining reunion scenarios that would never happen. Now they finally had answers, but the answers were more horrific than the mystery had been. Marcus Chen's parents, both retired physicians, released a statement through their attorney. "We are grateful to finally know what happened to our son and his friends. For nearly 3 decades, we wondered if Marcus might walk through our door. We imagined him starting a family, becoming a doctor, making us grandparents. Now we can grieve properly and honor his memory." Sarah, Kim's younger sister, now 45 and a mother of 3, spoke at a press conference. Sarah wanted to understand why people do terrible things to each other. She was studying psychology to help make the world safer. In a horrible way, her death is still serving that purpose by helping authorities prevent future tragedies. The Morrison family had never stopped searching. Jake's passion for forestry had inspired them to donate thousands of acres to the National Park Service in his memory. Emma's artistic talents were honored through scholarship programs at Pine Ridge University. Learning the truth about their deaths was devastating, but it also provided closure they had desperately needed. David Rodriguez's family had immigrated from El Salvador when he was 12 years old. His disappearance had devastated his parents, who blamed themselves for allowing him to stay in America for university instead of returning home with them. His father died in 2018 without ever knowing what happened to his son. His mother, now 81, attended every day of Crawley's trial. Lisa Park's family had established a missing persons advocacy organization in her honor, helping other families navigate the complex systems involved in disappearance cases. Learning that Lisa had been fighting for survival until the very end confirmed everything they had always believed about her character. The trial of Robert Crawley began in September 2024 and lasted 4 months. He was charged with 49 counts of first-degree murder, 67 counts of kidnapping, and numerous federal charges related to his interstate criminal enterprise. During the trial, additional details emerged about the final months of the Pine Ridge Six. Crawley had installed sophisticated recording equipment in their containment area, capturing hundreds of hours of audio and video documentation of their captivity. The recordings, which were not released to the public but were reviewed by investigators and families, revealed extraordinary courage and determination. Despite their circumstances, the 6 friends had maintained their bonds, supported each other psychologically, and continuously worked on escape plans. Marcus had become their leader not through force but through consensus, organizing daily routines that maintained mental health and physical fitness. Sarah had indeed kept detailed records, documenting everything she observed about their captor and their environment. Jake and Emma had used their different skill sets, his practical outdoors knowledge and her artistic observation abilities, to map every detail of their containment space. David had dismantled every electronic device Crawley gave them, constantly attempting to build communication equipment. Lisa had conducted systematic interviews with each of her friends, documenting their experiences and creating historical records. Most remarkably, they had never turned on each other. Crawley's psychological pressure tactics, designed to create internal conflict and destroy group cohesion, had failed completely. The Pine Ridge Six had remained united until the end. Defense attorneys attempted to argue that Crawley suffered from severe mental illness and was not competent to stand trial. Psychiatric evaluations revealed he had extremely high intelligence, meticulous organizational skills, and no evidence of delusions or psychotic symptoms. He understood exactly what he was doing and had planned his crimes carefully for decades. The jury took less than 3 hours to find him guilty on all counts. Before sentencing, family members were allowed to address the court. Marcus's mother spoke about the son who would have become a doctor, would have saved lives, would have made the world better. Sarah's father read entries from his daughter's childhood diary about wanting to understand human behavior so she could help people. Emma's art teacher displayed paintings the missing student had created during high school, works that showed remarkable talent and sensitivity. Jake's former Boy Scout leader described a young man who could navigate any wilderness but couldn't escape a madman's basement. David's computer science professors shared code he had written, elegant solutions to complex problems. Lisa's journalism advisor read articles she had published in the university newspaper, pieces that showed extraordinary insight for someone so young. Robert Crawley was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole on 49 consecutive terms. He showed no emotion when the sentence was read and refused to make any statement. The broader investigation into his network of associates continued. By March 2025, law enforcement agencies had arrested 17 additional suspects across 8 states and 2 countries. The investigation, now known as Operation Broken Circle, was ongoing. Pine Ridge University established the Pine Ridge Six Memorial Garden in the exact location where the friends used to meet between classes. 6 benches arranged in a circle, with bronze plaques containing their photographs and quotes from essays they had written during their time at the university. Marcus Chen, medicine is about fighting for people who cannot fight for themselves. Sarah Kim, understanding human behavior is the first step toward preventing human suffering. Jake Morrison, the wilderness teaches us that survival requires both individual strength and group cooperation. Emma Morrison, art helps us see beauty in a world that often seems broken. David Rodriguez, technology should serve humanity, not replace human connection. Lisa Park, the truth may be difficult to report, but it is always worth discovering. The families used civil lawsuit settlements from Crawley's conviction to establish scholarship programs, victim advocacy organizations, and missing persons research foundations. They had transformed their tragedy into a force for preventing future tragedies. Agent Shaw continued working cold cases, applying lessons learned from the Pine Ridge investigation to help solve other long-term disappearances. The techniques developed during Operation Broken Circle became standard protocol for FBI missing persons cases involving multiple victims. In interviews years later, Shaw reflected on the case that had defined her career. The Pine Ridge Six taught us that evil can hide in plain sight for decades, but it also taught us that love and friendship can survive even the worst imaginable circumstances. Those 6 young people never gave up on each other. That kind of bond is stronger than any weapon a predator can use. The case also led to significant improvements in missing persons investigations. Universities implemented better safety protocols for student activities. Law enforcement agencies developed new databases for tracking disappearances across jurisdictional boundaries. The public became more aware of predators who target young adults, leading to increased vigilance in reporting. But perhaps most importantly, the story of the Pine Ridge Six became a testament to human resilience. In the face of unimaginable horror, 6 friends had maintained their humanity, their connections, and their determination to survive. They had fought not just for themselves but for each other, demonstrating the power of love and loyalty even in the darkest circumstances. Their legacy lived on not just in memory but in action, inspiring improvements in public safety and criminal justice that would protect future generations of young people.